Good morning, colleagues. The Senate Finance Committee is now in session. We have two bills to hear this morning, and we'll start with House Bill 581, Chairman Davis. All right. We'll start with Delegate Bartlett, 934.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I see Delegate Wilson here. He may be here on behalf of Chair.
I'm aware.
Okay, fair enough.
Thank you. Okay.
Madam Chair, should I begin?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, Chair Kelly and Vice Chair Feldman, and members of the Finance Committee. House Bill 934 is intended to fix an inconsistency in a section of the health article. Under the general provisions of the article, a person in interest, such as a family member, can make a request to the chief examiner to correct autopsy findings and conclusions. This is very important for family members. This includes the cause and manner of death in one section, and then in another section, it excludes the manner. If you go to section 2, small I, Roman numeral I, you'll see that cause and manner is there, whereas in section 2, small Roman numeral 2, II, or 2, it is not there. The chief medical examiner has the authority to deny the request, and the person in interest may appeal the denial to the secretary and be heard in an administrative hearing. However, as the law stands now, the law does not give the person in interest the right to appeal the manner of death. This is very important, especially in suicide cases that are deemed by the examiner as suicide. Included with my testimony, and it just went out to you all, is a recent court opinion in which the judge mentions the inconsistency and discusses the testimony that was presented at the time the bill was heard originally back in 1992 to provide families with this right to challenge the cause of death. There were a vast amount of testifiers, and most of them were family members. The goal of the 1992 bill was to give persons of interest answers, to provide them with answers. Yet, I recently learned that the inconsistent wording precludes family members from learning on appeal the manner of death. This appears to be an unintended consequence based on the legislative history. In the House, I will say that we amended the bill to include a reporting requirement to this committee and HGO in the House from the Office of the Medical Examiner to provide the number of appeals made to the secretary. The reason for that is because if in the medical department, they state that it could be up to 500 cases. However, because that's what they do on average, or that's what they've done over the years. However, the OAH says that there has never been 500 cases in which they have reviewed. And so given that discrepancy, we put in that reporting so that we can see just how many it really is. It seems to be really only 1 or 2. And in fact, last year, there were only 2 cases. So with that said, House Bill 934 is intended to fix an inconsistency, and I urge a favorable report.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the sponsor?
Yes, Madam. Good morning.
Yes, Senator Benson.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Thank you for that testimony. What's the status of this bill in the House?
It passed through the House, and now it's over here. We do not have a cross-file.
Oh, you do not have, that was your second question.
Yes, yes.
So it's over here in the Senate. Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions? All right, sounds like a very important issue, and we appreciate your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You all have a great day.
Okay. All right, we're going next to House Bill 581. Is Chair Davis? Okay, yes, okay. You're on, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to come today. I believe Delegate Wilson is on Chair Kelly. He was subcommittee chair, and long after I had given up hope that this was, this would ever happen,
Mhm.
stayed with it, and that group pulled it together. So he would be the best person at this point to get into the nuts and bolts of why they did. I can tell you what they did, but he could tell you why they did it. So I'll just punt to him and let him present if he's there he is.
Yes, all right, thanks so much. All right, Delegate Wilson, you're on.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and colleagues. Here today on House Bill 581. And the intent of this bill was obviously to create a comprehensive statewide response to the current COVID-19 pandemic and future catastrophic health crises as they may occur. And as obviated by our current situation, we were completely caught off guard and on our back foot. We must make sure this never happens again. So after a lot of work, the House Bill 581 basically aims to ensure that going forward, there are proper coordination between all necessary state agencies. That local units are guided by the state agencies instead of being left on their own. And that statewide safety procedures are developed to give employers the much needed assistance and guidance, as well as built-in standards to ensure that our employees are protected throughout the state, have a safe work environment, receive proper protective equipment, they can avoid safe areas, and that their jobs are safe. That's in basic a nutshell what this bill does. I can go into detail if you'd like with a little more specificity. I know time is of the essence, so I'm at the chair's disposal on how you'd like me to proceed further.
I don't know if members have questions. I would just ask, I know that the bill was much broader initially, maybe it was too broad. What sort of is the scope in terms of which areas of employment are now included?
Okay, so basically now the way we've done it, obviously we have our essential workers, and in order for this to even kick in, the governor has to determine there's a catastrophic health emergency. So it's something that the governor begins with, and once that happens, our essential employers, they must comply with all federal and state safety standards and provide safety equipment availability at no cost to the employee. In addition to that, the federal if the federal or state government provides funding, then public health emergency leave, which is 112 hours, can be provided. We have dissected quite a bit out of this bill, including the $3 an hour back pay or hazardous duty pay. We realize that the financial cost would be just as catastrophic. But we also made sure that in this bill, we made sure that our Secretary of Labor has to adopt our federal standards, and that our Maryland Department of Health, in consultation with all the other agencies, becomes that center point for coordination for any future pandemic, and this one as well. And that they must respond back to us by August 1st with a plan of action on how they're going to move forward. I've heard that the Maryland Department of Health said they don't want to be involved in this, which I find ironic because we were working for this for 2.5 months with no response. But there's nobody better and more able to deal with a catastrophic health crisis than the Maryland Department of Health. And what I don't want to see is what happened last time when there are 5 or 6 different agencies doing their own thing and nobody even knows who to call if they have a complaint, if they feel they're in a dangerous work environment. So we believe the Department of Health will be best positioned to do all those things.
Thank you very much. We've got questions from Senator Augustine and then from Senator Hershey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate Wilson and Chair Davis for the hard work on this bill. I mean, it's been a long journey. And so I know where we are. Delegate Wilson, I do want to ask a couple questions to see if you could just respond and let me know sort of the thinking that you all had on a couple of the things that you have done. One of which is there was a removal of the 6-month enrollment period for the Maryland Health Benefit Exchange. Can you share with me why you came to do that?
Well, I believe that was wholly unnecessary, Mr. Chairman. Because it's open, there was no need to do that. we were put on notice that that was unnecessary.
Okay, that's fair enough. So another question, Madam Chair, if you don't mind. You all also seem to change the ability of so you allow the employers to determine who are the essential employees, right? So what was kind of the thought process for that?
Well, because the government determines which employers are considered essential, but not every employee in that area may be essential. Like your bookkeeper, even if you run, when you run, I don't know, a store, while the workers on that grocery store are essential, your bookkeeper can stay at home. It's for people that can't work from home. And while the state determines the different genres of who is going to be like basically essential employers, that we thought that employer had enough, would have input on who can actually work from home, because the definition of essential employee is someone who cannot do their job from home and is deemed essential by the government. So it's a two-part test.
Okay, thank you. And one last piece is there was a part in there that dealt with the testing, the free testing portion of it. What happened in that space?
Well, it's still relatively the same. What we did is instead of just saying the employer is responsible to pay for the testing, we want to ensure that prior to that, because we're trying to save our businesses as well, that like in the case of COVID, there are free testing sites. So there's no need for this. So the only time the employer would have to pay for testing is if, one, there are no free testing sites, and two, the insurance won't cover it. So that way, hopefully the employer won't take a hit, and the employee also doesn't have to be, punished because he has to be tested on a regular basis.
Okay, so but you still maintain that protection in the way that it's written right now, but it's just after those steps have occurred.
That's correct.
Okay, I really appreciate your the hard work that y'all did. Thank you for indulging me, Chair Kelly.
Thank you. Sounds like they really have worked hard and smart. All right, Senator Hershey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Wilson, Delegate Wilson, sorry. I'm concerned about just this public health emergency leave. Can you go into that in a little bit more detail, please?
Okay. So what we did is as you know, the bill was much larger before we got it. With the public health emergency leave now, I always have this thing. They say the Bible says you follow your treasure, and you find your heart. Meaning, for us as a state, if we believe that this leave is necessary, then we should back that up with our money. So instead of making the employers fund that, it has to be money gotten from either the state or the Fed. So this 14 days of leave, which is very important because this might be leave that you need to stay home. There's 6 different caveats of when you can use the leave. But first, it has to be funded by the federal or the state, and the governor has to make a special appropriations to ensure that that money gets back to the employers, excuse me.
The part of the bill says this section applies only if the federal or state government provides funding that can be used for public health emergency leave. So
That's correct.
We saw a lot of different stimulus type grants and loans that were available for businesses that may not been specifically identified on how a business would use them. Does this have to say this money, this grant, specifically has to be used for this type of leave, or could it be broad and a company gets leave? I see you shaking your head, so I'll let you answer.
No, because the way we have this is the governor has to allocate this money in the budget. It cannot just be loose money coming down, like you said, the FFCRA, or I'm probably not saying that right. It can't just be loose monies coming down to like the PPP. That cannot be considered. It has to be something dedicated solely to public health leave.
Okay.
The governor has to be the one to allocate that.
Okay, great. That was my question. So if employer went to go get a grant to help with their business and the operation expenses, they get a federal grant. That money does not have to be used for leave.
Correct. We kept the PPP in mind when we were doing that because we did not want to, saddle these individuals with that as well.
Great. Okay. And then you mentioned that there were these 6 ways of which this leave, emergency leave, can be used. Is any type, excuse me, any type of verification process needed for any of this?
Yeah, and it says that the employer may adopt a policy prohibit a pattern of abuse, and they may require documentation and refuse to pay the essential workers for this leave if the essential worker fails to provide documentation.
Okay.
This is money free, so we're hoping that tension is not really created, because we want people to take leave if they think they're sick, if they get diagnosed, or if a family member gets diagnosed, or the place of if they have a caregiver that goes out, or in this case, the school's closed. It's 14 days, but again, this is money that will not hurt the individual employer. I do know that when you lose an employee, that's difficult. I know you have to replace them. I have my own company, but we're living that tension of providing for our employees and not hurting our employers.
Okay, you just touched on my next question. I appreciate that. So go back to this section, I guess it's section 6 of this area that talks about to care for a child or other family member. And then you specifically said part 2 of that deals with what happens if a school closes.
Yes.
So again, my concern is that, let's say you have a larger business that's situated in a geographic area, and that county all of a sudden says schools are closed. Is this an immediate, and let's say everything is in place, the money's available, is this an immediate, you get a letter or a note from every parent and says, hey, start my 14-day clock, my kids don't have school, and then you have a number of people that all of a sudden are not showing up to work?
Well, again, it depends, because you have to be an essential worker working for an essential employer. You cannot be a contractor or a contractee. You have to, like I said, be an employee. So you have to fit all those things first. The catastrophic health emergency has to have been occurred. The money has to be designated, like you said. And then at that time, you can request your leave. So in a catastrophic health emergency, yes, there is a chance that due to school closure or something of that nature, or just an outbreak, that you may lose a majority of your workforce for up to 14 days.
Right.
The hope would be to be able to stagger. Again, this is no perfect system and not a silver bullet, but Teddy Roosevelt said this a long time ago. The best thing you can do is the right thing. The second best thing you can do is the wrong thing. The worst thing you can do is nothing. Right. So this is what we're trying to do.
I understand that. I'm just trying to fit the pieces in as
Sure.
this might happen. And again, I do appreciate yours and Mr. Chairman's work on all of this. I know it was a long, drawn out process, and several, I see my colleagues participated in some of the work groups, and I think you do have something here that is, at least, we can find a way to push something through. There'll probably be questions as it arises and it gets implemented, but at least there's a framework. But got one final question. During the pandemic previously, the president issued an executive order under the Defense Protection Act that required certain industries to stay working. One of those was the food supply chain resources, mandated that they must remain open. We can talk about all these different types of essentials, but there's certainly something that's the highest level of, let's say, essential workers that must be working in order to keep the food supply chain going. Does any of this preempt that, or if that same order was issued, does that take precedence over anything, or was that addressed?
Well, and that was actually the onus of this bill, is to ensure that those were the individuals we were thinking of. That's why we had the right to refuse, making sure that they had a safe environment, that the proper safety equipment was going to be provided at no cost to the employee, to ensure that those people would be able to show up to work. And we were definitely thinking about the health workers, food service industry were the two industries we were thinking about in crafting this entire legislation.
Okay, but the last one that we talked about had to deal with kids in schools that were closed down. So you've got two different sides here. You've got the state closing down, or the county closing down a school, the president of the United States saying the food supply chain must keep going. And you've got a clause in here that says, well, if you got a kid and the kid's in school, you can take 14 days off.
That's
I'm
correct.
kind of asking which one takes precedence here.
Obviously, the 14 days would take precedence, because if this person can't come to work, if it's not a safe work environment, if they're nursing or caring for somebody who themselves is sick, we must protect that worker. The fact that we're just giving them 14 days is a lot less than they would have liked. So I'm not saying that there may be a slight disruption, but there won't be a break, because the key is We can't protect everything and think of every eventuality, but we can ensure that the system doesn't break. This may be a disruption, correct. We hope that we can coordinate that, and we hope with more guidance from the health department and the Department of Labor, because they're going to provide guidance to us according to this bill on how to better implement this, that we can avoid that. But what we can't pretend is that these people can just keep coming into work when they have no resources, when they have no way of taking care of their family members.
I somewhat understand. I mean, I know where you're going, but again, you know, especially out the Eastern Shore, we have a lot that does with the food supply. And again, last year, the president ordered through an executive order that the food supply chain industries must remain working. And I don't want to get into a situation where we have conflicting type of information where a business in the food supply chain stays open or tries to stay open. And we've got language that says, well, you know, you're in an area, counties close the schools down, you don't have a place to put your kid, you can take 14 days off, and it's almost in defiance of the executive order. And, you know, more importantly, we have a problem in the food supply chain. So that's all I'm looking for, just kind of what supersedes or what takes precedence over the other.
Well, and all joking aside, the 13th Amendment would supersede everything, meaning these people you can't make people, they can't be indentured servants. If they have family issues, we're trying to provide for both sides. I totally understand your issue.
Yeah.
But while the president can say this business must remain open, he can't make people come to work. Nor
I understand that. I know. Okay. Thank you very much.
Vice Chair Feldman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate Wilson, Chair Davis, and I have to give a shout out to Senator Augustine, who brought this issue to the committee in the first place. And having sat through a lot of those Friday morning work groups, I was like Chair Davis, not optimistic we were to get to this point, but just you know, during the hearings and a lot of specifically the provision dealing with the right to refuse. If you could walk through, because you know, whether it was the healthcare industry or these nonprofits dealing with disabled kids, you know, I got a lot of sort of questions about how that would work in the real world. If you know, under what circumstance can somebody walk away or refuse to do a task? I think the language here has the right to refuse to perform an assigned task. Could you just clarify exactly how that would work?
it's already in existence.
Didn't that come from most Delegate?
Yeah. All we did is we basically, the right to refuse, we just adopted most current standards. We got caught on the axle about how to implement it. And then we realized that most already has it. And that if an individual does not feel they're going to a safe work environment, that they have the right to report it. And that once they report it, most has to go through their investigation. So that is, all of this is already in existence, which is why we didn't differentiate between healthcare and workers at a grocery store, because all this already happens. Most is already responsible for all that.
Okay. Okay.
You guys are asking really good questions that might come up on.
Well, Madam Chair, Madam Chair, we're really smart on this committee. We ask really targeted questions.
I would say, Senator Augustine, you helped ruin my session with this bill. So thank you very much for that gigantic thing you dropped in my lap.
All right. Is there any other burning issue? I think you made us better prepared for it on the Senate floor. And we do want to recognize all of the work that Senator Augustine helped begin, and all of you who went to the hearings and gave input. And Mr. Chair, you brought the right person in as your emissary this morning.
Yes.
Understand where the
You have
bill
to
is
keep him
now.
busy, Chair Kelly. If you don't keep him, if you don't keep his hands busy, they'll be into something else. So we gave him a lot to work on. But I will say, in all seriousness, two things. Just, yes, this was Senator Augustine's bill. I don't want there to be any confusion about where it came from. He asked me to be the cross file and so forth. So that's where the credit belongs. And also, I know Mr. Smolsky, if our committee counsel worked on it, Laura Addis, if she can be of assistance to you guys, if it makes it out of committee and onto the floor, please call on Laura. She taught Delegate Wilson everything he knows about the bill.
Okay, well, we're going to have
Chair,
a
Mr.
voting
Chair.
session later this morning, and I hope we get this bill on so we can move it.
Madam Chair, I too just wanted to add my 2 cents and thank Senator Augustine. He's put a lot of work in this, was really stressed out about it. But what really tipped off my morning was the awesome Bible quote from Delegate Wilson. I was truly impressed. So thank you.
Yes, yes.
Googled it.
If he were an attorney, he could be a preacher, couldn't he? Okay.
Could we
All
ask the
right.
good delegate to repeat that Bible quote, please?
You follow your treasure, you'll find your heart.
Thank you for that.
All right, we want to thank everybody. Colleagues on the committee, we have an 11 a.m. Voting session before we go to the floor.